We did it, boys! Yanqing is dead and Jingliu killed him. The second she released any account that pulled her, instantly negated any work that they put into Yanqing, as even a level 50 Jingliu can outdamage a maxed out Yanqing, and you don't even need her signature light cone to do that. She power crept his ass so bad that he dropped even further down any tier list that already existed, as his only use in the game was the fact that he was the only real ice DPS until Jingliu was released. With her release, I've also heard the term power creep a lot more in the community discussion recently, as it has become more apparent that Honkai Star Rail is starting down the path that most games tend to fall victim to. They keep releasing stronger and stronger characters until they realize that they've made characters too strong and end up upping the difficulty to try to match the character's current power levels. This is a pattern that we've seen before in other Hoyoverse games, biggest example being of course Genshin Impact, which is a comparison I will go into later this video. But first, let's try to track power creep in the game up until this point. To get an idea of what the game started with, we are going to look at the base 5-star characters in the game to see what sort of numbers they are outputting, to get an idea of what range of damage is acceptable, what is outrageous, and what is just purely bad. Our original cast of 5 stars are Welt, Gepard, Bailu, Yanqing, rest in peace, Himiko, Bronya, and Clara. While each of them have their own uses, we are going to look at mainly damage dealers in 3 target situations, as that is what most of the game is now. Because of this fact, we aren't going to be looking at supporting or healing power creep in this section, but we will cover it in the next section of the video. That leaves us looking at Welt, Yanqing, may God rest his soul, Himiko, and Clara. For the most part, Welt and Clara are still viable to this day as decent carries, but that's because they both have gimmicks that are not explored by any other character in the game so far. Welt, while putting decent damage, also is one of the few characters that can manipulate enemy turn speed, which allows you to deal more attacks before the enemies can even take a turn. Clara is also decent because she's one of 2 characters with a counter built into her kit, which helps with a very niche playstyle that not a lot of characters fill right now. As for Yanqing, 6 feet under and still going down, and Himiko, well, best I can say for Himiko is that if you pair her with Herta, they are really good at doing dailies really fast, but anywhere else Himiko is probably one of the worst units in the game. As for Yanqing, as mentioned earlier, the only thing he had going for him was the fact that he was the only real ice DPS in the game until this update. His damage was also on par with, well, if or when you got any of his follow-up attacks to proc, which they never fucking do. Anyway, that's our base cast of DPS characters, but that's not where the story ends now, does it? Now we have to follow limited time characters to understand how DPS characters have been not so slowly ramping up in damage. We'll start with Seela, who was the first limited banner character, with its time of release being at the launch of the game. And at launch, Seela was broken as fuck. With her Resurgence passive, she not only was the best single target unit in the game, she also was the best AoE character in the game. The fact that, without her turn reset, she already had some of the highest damage scaling at the time of her release, she topped every character, and it wasn't really close at all. Next we move on to Jing Yuan, and boy oh boy does this character have a fun history in the game. In the beta testing, Jing Yuan had more damage than Seela, so he was hyped to be the next big pull, and characters around the world were waiting with bated breath for his release. Then he came out, and the community outrage began. His damage was heavily nerfed from the beta to the live servers, and his damage wasn't close to what the community was expecting. He quickly picked up titles like Mid Yuan and such because of his low damage. As for the said damage, well, it's leveled out to just above most viable standard characters. Not bad, just not what was hyped up in the community. Also, the community learned to never believe in leaks again. Not. Next up on the DPS shopping block, we have Blade. Arlen, but good, finally allowed a risky playstyle that wasn't just flat out killing your characters for damage and it not working out. It also helped that Blade had the damage to back up his playstyle. Finally, a new ruler of 3 target damage was able to take Sela's place, and even though he wasn't stronger than her in single target damage, that was alright because he wasn't supposed to be the best at single target damage. Okay, the next character is a fun one. Kafka, our first DPS that was able to enable a damage over time playstyle. Her damage was crazy. The damage over time was crazier, and it finally allowed some characters in the game to have a place in the meta, like Sampo. While she did need a full team to produce some really crazy damage, all the damage was worth it for the investment you had to put in. Her damage rivaled Blade in the 3-target and even passed him in 5-target damage. Finally, we had a DPS for every type of playstyle, and each character was king or queen of their own style of damage. Everything was right in the world. Then, disaster struck. Dan Heng and Baibader Lune burst onto the scene with more damage than what should have been possible. He was hitting 3 times more single target damage with his skill than Sela was hitting with her fucking ultimate. And did I mention his skill was supposed to be 3 target damage? Well, sure, it took up to 3 skill points to get the maximum amount of damage out of one skill. It was enough to skyrocket him to the top of every single tier list, and ended up knocking down almost everyone down a tier in every single tier list. And that was just the beginning. The next DPS character released was Jing Liu, which somehow managed to rival and in some instance outclass Dan Heng and Baibader Lune in terms of damage. I don't know what Hoyoverse were thinking with the damage scalings for these characters. As for now, that's where we stand in terms of DPS power creep over the history of Honkai Starro. That being said, the next damage character, Topaz, comes out in 5 days at the time of writing this script, and I'm scared to see how crazy her damage is going to be. Editor Shadow here, she's come out, she's okay. As for now, we should probably look how supports have been slowly power crept over time as well. I promise you this section is going to be way shorter than the last section, as there have been less support characters released since launch. That being said, I'm still going to split this section up into 2 subsections, just to make the structure of this video flow a bit better. We are going to look at damage support first, then we'll look at sustainability supports later. Alright, so since there are little 5-star supporting characters in the game, we're going to also look at 4 stars in this section as well, so that the section doesn't last like 3 seconds. In terms of damaging supports on release, we had 4 main options. Those characters were Asta, Tingyun, Bronya, and Pela. Each one kind of filled different niches in the game, so while they each were good in different situations, their strength is a little hard to calculate. First off, we have Asta. Asta was super good for speeding up your whole team, and while she does have an attack boost, it's not super easy to keep up all the time in every situation, and it's also not the best attack boost in the game, so early in the game's history, she was kind of pushed to the side and not really considered the best support, but she is really good if you need like high speed requirements. As for Pela, she was also considered terrible at launch. She removed enemy buffs and also defense, but it wasn't really enough buff removal to seem strong, so she kind of got the short end of the stick. Funnily enough, with the release of Jing Liu, she's become one of the best supports in the game. Next up is Tingyun, and with being a 4-star, she's pretty damn strong, and she's still a super strong support to this day. She allows your carries to ult more, with just giving them extra energy, and she also has crazy attack and damage boosts. Last up on the list is Bronya. Bronya is so fucking strong. I don't know if Hoyoverse will ever be able to power creep her because she's just too damn good at what she does. She not only gives insane damage and attack boost, but she also allows your carries to basically attack twice in one turn, which is one of the best things a support can do in a turn-based combat game. Now you may be asking yourself, Shadow, those all sound really good. How did Hoyoverse even power creep that already great cast of supporting characters? Well, my dear viewer, let me tell you about a character called Silverwolf. She can slow enemies, reduce enemy attack, reduce enemy defense twice, but most of all, she can implant a weakness onto an enemy, which in this turn-based combat game is so fucking broken. Not only does it allow characters to attack enemy toughness bars that they wouldn't be able to affect normally, it also allows them to deal 10% extra damage to an enemy when the toughness bar is up, and an additional 10% extra damage after that toughness bar is broken. It turns the game on easy mode essentially. You can run the same team comp into any enemy and not have to worry about having the correct damage types to maximize your damage. As for the only other support character that we've gotten since launch, her name is Yanqing, and she's kinda similar to Asta in the sense that she has some good damage buffs, but they are kinda hard to keep up properly to buff the proper teammates. Now on to the sustainability supports. In the interest of time and the fact that I'm writing this script at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to stick to the 5-star defense units, and I will cover the 4 and 5-star healers because that situation is kind of funny. So far, the defense units are all pretty strong and fit into different situations the best right now. For example, the one 5-star defense character on release, Jeopard, is still considered the best shielding character in the game, and the only limited 5-star defense character, Fu Xuan, is good at just helping your team survive by directing part of the damage dealt to any of her teammates to herself and having a built-in heal. That's really all there is to talk about with defensive units, but the same can't be said about the healers. Hey, remember how I said this section was going to be shorter? Yeah, that might have been a straight up lie. Whoops. Anyways, healers, whee! Okay, so on release, we had 2 healers in the game. Bailu, a 5-star bounce healer with okay healing and a revive passive, and Natasha, a 4-star hero with meh healing, but you get her for free by just playing the game. All in all, not a great start for healers, especially when you consider that Bailu doesn't even have a cleanse built into her kit. The only way we could go with healers is up, but in true Hoyoverse fashion, they couldn't just make slightly better healers. No, they had to make the most broken healer that probably will ever grace this game. Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce a familiar name to you if you watched my last video. Luocha! This guy has it all, from an auto-trigger heal that procs whenever an ally drops below 50% health, to an off-field AoE heal that just heals whenever any character on your team does any damage, or the fact that his ult hits harder than Himiko's entire kit while also removing 1 buff from every enemy on the field. And that's it for Luocha. Psych, this broken motherfucker is an attack-based healer, so it can hit harder and heal ungodly amounts. Okay, I'm gonna be real for a second. I actually stopped writing this script at this point and went to bed, and I'm still mad about Luocha being so damn good. Thankfully, Lynx, the only other healer released to the game since launch, isn't as broken. That being said, she's just a better Natasha. She's almost the same kit with just more added to it and better heals. We'll see with the release of new supporting characters if Hoyo will continue the trend of making supports more broken as time goes on. As for right now, we don't really know of any supporting characters that are planned to come to Honkai Star Rail, so we'll see. Which brings up an interesting idea. Let's see if we can predict power creep in the future of Honkai Star Rail. This isn't the first Hoyo game that has struggled with the issue of power creep. In fact, I think most of their games have had to deal with some form of power creep, but the only other one of the games that I have enough knowledge to talk about is Genshin Impact. Now, for the most part, Genshin also had a decent starting cast of characters you could play as. What was given at launch was enough to comfortably clear the game, and can still clear it today, albeit not as comfortably. But as new banners were released and new characters came to the community, they kept on getting stronger and stronger until eventually the original cast of characters and even some of the limited characters had such little damage compared to the characters that were releasing that the community deemed them as unusable. At around version 3.0, or 2 years after Genshin was released, Hoyoverse began ramping down the strength of new characters to try to balance out the game a little bit. This is where Genshin entered a phase known as Reverse Power Creep Era. This all came to a climax with the Dia incident. If you don't know what the Dia incident is, well, basically Hoyo released a character that the community was really hyped for, only for her damage and utility to be completely useless, and ended with her being labeled as one of the worst 5-star characters in the game, even weaker than a few 4-star characters. If I had a nickel for every time Hoyoverse released a hot female character that wielded fire but was weak as fuck, I'd have 4 nickels, which isn't much, but it's weird that they've done it 4 fucking times. As for Genshin of today, well, they just got back to their typical power creeping ways with the release of the newest character, Neuvillette. I wouldn't be surprised if Honkai Star Rail follows a similar trend of power creep, but at a different rate to Genshin. The power creep cycle of Honkai Star Rail is currently blowing up way faster than Genshin ever did, and it makes me scared, because these two motherfuckers look sick as hell, and I really hope they aren't released during a period of reverse power creep, because I want to be able to use them while playing the hardest content in the game, because goddamn, they look so cool, and it was the entire reason I made this video. This is no longer a script, this is a plea, Hoyoverse, please don't do these character dirty. Where were we? Oh, right, predicting power creep. If you want my honest opinion, we really don't have enough data to comfortably predict how fast Honkai Star Rail's power creep cycle is going to be. We are still in the phase of getting characters that fit into different situations, and while characters are obviously getting stronger, it's again tough to say at what rate they're going to make released characters and early limiteds obsolete. I know a lot of you didn't really watch the end of the last video, but that won't stop me from asking to hear your thoughts on this matter in the comments again. This video didn't really have a solution, as I don't know if Hoyoverse will ever do a post-release character power tuning, so I don't really know if there's a way to fix the power creep that's already begun to happen. If you haven't already, hit the like and the subscribe button, as doing those small things are way more impactful for a small channel like mine than you would think. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed another one of my terrible Honkai Star Rail takes, and I guess I'll catch y'all in the next one.